Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Exchange webinar series. Thank you for joining us for today's discussion on how our artificial intelligence is transforming the way businesses operate, market themselves, and serve their customers. Today's session is designed specifically for retailers, grocers, food producers, and other small businesses looking to better understand how AI can be used in practical, accessible ways. We'll explore tools that can help streamline day-to-day operations, improve marketing efforts, increase efficiency, and save valuable time. No technical background required. We'll also leave plenty of time at the end for Q&A. I'm Curtis Picard, and I serve as the president and CEO of both the Retail Association of Maine and the New Hampshire Retail Association. We're pleased to partner on today's webinar alongside our good friends at the Maine Grocers and Food Producers Association. At this time, I'd like to invite Amy Downing to briefly introduce herself on behalf of the Maine Grocers and Food Producers Association.
Thank you, Curtis. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Downing, and I'm pleased to be joining you today on behalf of the Maine Grocers and Food Producers Association. Christine Cummings, our executive director, was unfortunately unable to be with us this morning, and I'm happy to be filling in for her. Artificial intelligence is quickly becoming one of the most talked about topics in business, but it can also feel overwhelming. Today's presentation is designed to cut through the noise and provide practical, real-world strategies that businesses of all sizes can begin using immediately. We're grateful you've taken the time to join us and hope you leave today's session with new ideas and tools you can put into practice right away. Before we begin, we'd like to recognize today's webinar sponsors, whose continued support helps make programs like this possible. A sincere thank you to Poland Spring, Shaw's Supermarkets, Associated Grocers of New England, Altria, Bizzuto's, C&S Wholesale Grocers, Coca-Cola Beverages Northeast, Hannaford Supermarkets, HP Hood, and Pepsi. We truly appreciate your continued partnership and support. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. All attendees are muted and will remain muted throughout the webinar. We'll hold a live question and answer session at the conclusion of today's presentation. To submit a question at any time, move your cursor to the bottom of your screen and click the Q&A icon. If you don't see it, you may find it under the three dots on the right-hand side of your toolbar. Type your question into the box and click Send. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available afterward for anyone who would like to revisit the presentation or share it with colleagues.
This morning, we're delighted to welcome our guest presenter, Rich Brooks, founder and president of Flyte New Media, a Maine-based digital marketing agency celebrating nearly 3 decades of helping businesses grow online. Rich is a nationally recognized digital marketing strategist, speaker, author, and educator with expertise spanning search engine optimization, digital advertising, content marketing, social media, and artificial intelligence. Throughout his career, he's helped hundreds of organizations increase their online visibility, generate qualified leads, and build stronger connections with their customers through practical, results-driven marketing strategies. In addition to leading Flyte New Media, Rich is the founder and host of the Agents of Change Digital Marketing Conference and podcast, where he shares insights from industry experts with thousands of marketers and business leaders each year. He's also the author of The Lead Machine, the Small Business Guide to Digital Marketing, and serves as the technology contributor on News Center Maine's 207, where he regularly helps viewers better understand emerging technology and digital trends. Today, Rich will show us how artificial intelligence can become a practical business tool, not something to fear, but something that can help organizations work smarter, communicate more effectively, and better serve their customers. Please join me in welcoming Rich Brooks.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Let's jump into the presentation. I'm going to share my screen, and we will get started. So it was the beginning of last year, 2025, and I set a goal to make Flyte an AI-first company because that's what the AI experts I was following and listening to told me I needed to do if I wanted to succeed in this new AI era. By the end of 2025, I realized that that was some of the dumbest advice I had ever followed or agreed with, because no one wanted to hire Flyte New Media because we're using AI. They don't want AI-generated reports and advice. They want to work with experienced people, people who have been in the trenches and understand branding, web design, and digital marketing. Humans they could talk to, ask questions of, and trust. That's when I realized we had to be a human first company who leveraged AI to create better outcomes for our clients. I share this story because it's one of the underlying tensions in today's presentation. How can we take advantage of AI's promise and opportunities throughout our business without destroying the trust of our customers that keeps us in business? Exhibit A. This is a photo of Boychik bagels, homemade artisanal bagels. This is the photo that Forkable used when they decided to replace real photos with AI-generated images without the restaurant's knowledge or approval. I mean, what's even going on here? It's like, why did they lop off the bottoms of these bagels? And I know lox and I know chive spread, but who orders pink label? Emily Winston, the founder of Boychuk, called these photos creepy, and along with other owners, asked Forkable to remove the images. But the backlash against AI isn't just for large corporations or SaaS companies. Rachel Smith, owner of the Salty Otter, caught flack from locals because of the perception that she had created her logo with AI. Now, she contends that she only used AI for some of the original layout and that she created the image on her own using Photoshop, Illustrator, and other digital tools, but the damage was done. Negative online reviews followed, complaining that she wasn't supporting local artists. Ultimately, she replaced this logo you see here with white on black text only. Whether this is fair or not isn't really relevant. The fact is, in both these cases, AI was used poorly and trust was broken with the customer. So I had a nice introduction, so I'll just say, who am I? My name is Rich Brooks. I'm the president of Flyte New Media. We're a digital agency located in Portland, Maine. I started the Agents of Change, which is a weekly podcast and an annual conference that's all about digital marketing. I'm the tech guru on 207, where I do hard-hitting news stories like what are the best recipe sites online and how do you take better pictures with your smartphone. And then a few years back, I wrote the book, The Lead Machine, The Small Business Guide to Digital Marketing. In short, I'm a business owner, but I'm also a sales and marketing guy. I'm also an AI guy these days, using AI in all aspects of my business. But I'm not an expert in all aspects of my business, certainly not the financial side. And I'm certainly not an expert in all aspects of your business. You understand your operations, your vendor relationships, and your books better than I ever will. My goal today is to give you a framework in which to implement AI in a way that improves your business and your bottom line. And despite the title of this presentation, I'm going to be pretty tool agnostic. The way I tend to look at AI is they fit into three categories. AI first, meaning that these tools were built from the ground up around AI. Baked in, tools that we may have been using for years that suddenly have AI components. And then industry specific. These are often built on AI first tools, and then they're just fine-tuned for a specific industry or need. AI first tools are things like large language models or LLMs, things like Claude, ChatGPT. They could be image generators like Midjourney, or they could be media editing tools like Descript. Baked in are tools like Canva, Microsoft Office, Google Drive, and Photoshop, tools that were around for a while, but now they have heavy AI influences within those tools. And then industry-specific tools, Relex, Hotel Retail, Hello Retail, Ada, and Zebra Prescriptive Analytics. Now, I'm not going to get into these industry tools today because I don't have hands-on experience with them. My goal for today is to show you how you can leverage AI into all aspects of your business, but I will provide a roundup of industry-specific AI tools for you and the right platforms through a QR code that's going to be at the end of the presentation. Most of my focus today is going to be on the AI first LLMs and how you can better leverage them. Now, before we dive in, I do want to address some of the challenges that come with AI. I've already mentioned a few with the problems that we have with the examples of the different images. One of the biggest problems with AI is what's called hallucinations, or when AI makes stuff up. This is a natural outcome of generative AI, but it can definitely be problematic for your business. As an example, in 2023, the discount grocery chain Pack and Save launched its AI-powered Savvy Meal Bot designed to generate recipes from leftover ingredients. One dish that the chatbot recommended was a recipe for an aromatic water mix. It described the mixture of ammonia, bleach, and water as the perfect non-alcoholic beverage to quench your thirst. Now, of course, you may know that mixing ammonia and bleach produces a highly toxic chloramine gas, which can cause severe respiratory damage or death. It also created a recipe for a mysterious meat stew that called for carrots, potatoes, onion, and 500 grams of chopped human flesh. Now, this is obviously a very extreme case of AI going off the rails and hallucinating, but even a minor hallucination can lose trust with your customers. So how do we kind of fix this? Well, yes, hallucinations will always be part of AI output, but there's something called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, which you tell the AI, I don't want you making things up, and I don't want you just searching the internet for an answer. I want you to use the documents I'm providing you. That will cut down on hallucinations. Learning how to prompt more specifically, getting some training for you and your staff, that can also cut down on hallucinations as well. And then the most important part of this is having humans in the loop, human oversight. When we've started using AI for a while, and if we start to trust it, sometimes we don't always check the results, and that can be very detrimental to the trust we're trying to build up with our customers. Another issue is data security or confidentiality. Many of us have our customers' data available to us. And if we share that data with AI, we may be inadvertently sharing it with the world. It's like taking that data and putting it up on a billboard in Times Square. So how do you protect against this? First of all, don't use free tools. Almost all the LLMs have a free version. Don't use those for business. Whenever it comes to software, if the software is free, then you are the product. When you are using a free model and you upload data to that model, the platforms are using that data to train up the next generation of models. So choose enterprise or at least paid versions of whatever LLMs you're using. That being said, I still assume that my data is going to be leaked. So the next step is to anonymize your data. If you are uploading, say, customer records because you want to find some patterns in it, anonymize that data, remove the emails, remove the names, and come up with some other identifying terms so that the AI is not being trained on it. And lastly, create and adopt some policies that are very easy to understand and implement for your team. And we'll talk a little bit about that throughout the presentation as well. Other concerns that you might hear, one is job loss. This is obviously a real problem. I actually did a segment last night on 207 all about is AI coming for your job? A lot of your employees, if you start using AI, may have concerns around this. Becoming dependent on AI. This is another one. Just like, is Google making us dumb? People are like, is AI making us dependent on it where we can't critically think on our own? That's a real issue, and it's even been given a name recently called think slop or brain slop. And then lastly, some environmental concerns. And these are legitimate concerns about the impact of data centers. The usage of AI on an individual usage is minimal, but the data centers and training these models do take a lot of energy to create. Now, none of these are reasons not to use AI, in my opinion, but rather to use it intentionally and be aware of its shortcomings and blind spots. And why is that? Because AI is a competitive advantage. And if you ignore it and your competition embraces it, you are going to be at a competitive disadvantage in the marketplace. So for the rest of today, I want to look at integrating AI into your business through three lenses. What does AI do well? Because we've certainly seen some examples of what it doesn't do well. Where can we use it throughout our company? And then how can we use it better? So we'll start with, what does AI do well? Or where is AI the strongest? And there are 5 categories that pop to mind for me. The first one is drafting and editing. And notice that I say drafting and not writing. I love to write, and I know that AI these are large language models and they can write. And even though they've been trained up on Shakespeare and Stephen King and Daniel Steele, I still feel that I'm a better writer than AI because I have real world experiences that I can pull from that AI can't. It can fake it, but it's not the same thing. Also, you can train AI to sound like you or your brand, and I'll talk about that in a bit. I have an AI that I've trained to sound like me. I call it Orbi. It's my own personal AI. And I've created AIs that speak in the voice of many of our clients. But even when I'm using these tools, I still go back and read through and edit everything again. I also love AI for editing. Once I've written a blog post or an email newsletter, I'll use AI as a second set of eyes. I have my own personal AI, as I mentioned, Orbi, and I've trained Orbi so that not only does Orbi know my voice, it knows our ICPs, our ideal client personas. So if I write a blog post and it's not focused on the pain points of my ICPs, Orbi will flag that and make recommendations on how I can improve the content I've created so it's more valuable to my ICP. AI is great for summarizing, for making sense of dense, long, difficult documents. When I'm trying to understand the latest changes in AI models or a piece of legislation that might affect my business, I turn it over to AI. And you can do the same with new contracts, government regulations, or sales reports. This isn't to say that AI should replace your lawyer or an internal person, but just in the fact that it's good to get another set of eyes. AI is great at analyzing and extracting data. Sometimes the data is messy. A folder of customer feedback dating for years, or POS sales exports, or exit interview notes in a folder somewhere. AI can pinpoint recurring themes and turn them into actionable items. AI is really good at pattern recognition and forecasting, so it's really good for brainstorming and then pressure testing your ideas. Ideas for new products to carry, or what to charge for them, or how to promote them. And finally, AI is good at explaining or translating complex ideas, but that might have been written for the wrong recipient. In this case, it's re-expressing information in a clearer fashion for this new audience. Maybe it's turning legalese into English, or sales numbers into recommendations, or a technical spec into a training instruction that even a new hire straight out of high school would completely understand and be able to follow. Drafting and editing, summarizing, analyzing and extracting, brainstorming and pressure testing, and explaining and translating are great uses for AI. Now, let's look at the other lens to look at different departments within your organization to see how you might put it to use. Or where can we use AI? As I mentioned, I'm a sales and marketing guy. I'm head of business development for our company. I'm really the only person doing sales. And although I have a team of marketers now, I did start just by doing all of my own marketing. So this is where I feel most comfortable. And we use AI for a lot of our sales and marketing in many different ways. So some examples of the ways that you might use it include help for slow moving product. You could take a slow moving product and into a compelling in-store promo or social post, so test several variations against real world problems. You could create email campaigns, maybe a seasonal email campaign around holiday hours or a local sourcing story about where you got some of your products from in this holiday season and make sure that it comes out in the store's actual voice. And then analyzing what's driving foot traffic to your retail spot or online engagement to your website from messy analytics and turn that into plain English takeaways about how you can do even better. Let's look at a sample prompt that might work here. For the first one, I run a small grocery store. I have 40 units of product that aren't moving and expire in 3 weeks. Write 3 short in-store promo signs and 1 social media post to help move it. Keep the tone warm and local, not salesy. Avoid anything that sounds like a big box discount ad. That's the kind of prompt that you could put into ChatGPT or Claude to get a response. Moving to customer service, there's a number of ways that you can utilize this here. You can use it to respond to a negative review without sounding like a form letter. You can use it to draft FAQs or even chatbot style answers for common questions that can go up on your website, or if you are using some sort of chatbot, that can be fed into the chatbot. And then You can sort batches of customer emails or complaints by issue type and urgency before a human responds. You can sort overnight emails by priority so you know what the most important things are to do the very next morning and to take care of this. And this can be for you or it could be automatically sent to your customer service reps. Looking at a sample prompt for this, a customer left this review, and then you paste the review in there. Draft a response that acknowledges a specific issue, doesn't sound offensive, and doesn't read like a form letter. Keep it under 100 words. Sign it from owner or manager name. That's pretty straightforward, and we all know that when somebody complains about our company, it feels like they're complaining about us, and we can take it personally. This kind of removes that issue. Very often, people in my company come to me for a tone check because I'm very good about that. But even I have emails or messages that have to go out or reviews to respond to, and I can feel that I'm being petty or I'm letting my emotions through. And AI is a good way of checking that out and making sure that you're sending the messages you want the world to see. I know in flight that my director of operations is using AI more and more every single day to automate parts of her job. For you, it could be about translating a new food safety regulation or supplier spec sheet into a one-page, here's what changes for us type memo, or stress testing a staffing plan for a rush period, options for trade-offs laid out before you commit to anything, or creating SOPs. And this is something that we use all the time. We've created an SOP for most of the aspects of our business, and we usually start by asking Claude or ChatGPT to give us a first draft of this, and then we refine it. But at this point, Claude knows enough about our business that it knows the size of the company and the type of work we do and the type of audience that we have. And so that helps personalize that SOP. A prompt for this might look like, here's a new food safety regulation update, and then you can paste the text or link to it if it's online. Summarize it in plain English in under 200 words, then list as bullet points exactly what changes for small grocery stores' day-to-day operations. Flag anything with a compliance deadline. Like I said, finance has never been my strong suit. So even though we've hired people, an outside company to help us with our finances, I like having a better understanding and knowing what questions to ask and having a basic understanding of what we're going to be discussing. So I will often query Claude or Orbi to get better answers out of it. In finance, it can take a messy sales by category export into a plain read on what's moving and what's dead weight in your operations. You can pressure test pricing assumptions on a new item before it goes on the shelf. And you can find trends in year-over-year P&L statements. I did this. I fed years of our P&L statements into AI, and I asked it to find trends. And it identified a couple things that were growing that I hadn't noticed, and one thing that was falling off, and I hadn't realized that this had become a problem. And so we adjusted based on that information. Again, AI is really good at spotting these trends and patterns and forecasting based on them. So a prompt might look like, I'm considering pricing a new private label item at X. My cost is Y per unit. Comparable items in my store range from this to that. Pressure test this price. What are the risks of pricing it too high, too low, and what would you ask me before setting on a number? This kind of back and forth, this testing of your assumptions can be very helpful to give you a second set of eyes. I will say that you need to push back because we've all had situations where AI makes a mistake, it hallucinates. And then we say, hey, I've noticed that this is wrong. And it will always say something like, you're right to call me out on that. It was an absolute mistake. Let me give you a correct answer. You have to be in the habit of challenging AI when it does some of this pressure testing, brainstorming, or forecasting. I find that AI is wrong a lot of the time. It's great for that first round, but it may not be right for that final thing. So you still have to use your own human experience when you're using AI. And then finally, administration or HR. You can use it to draft job postings around your brand voice instead of just using generic corporate HR copy. You can turn long staff meetings, if you record them like we do at Flyte, into transcripts, and then turn that into a clean action list when you're done. And then create policies that are both legal and fair. And you can have it reference Maine or New Hampshire state laws just to make sure that you're staying in compliance as you're drafting these. A prompt for this might look something like write a job posting for part-time cashier at a family-owned grocery store. We value reliability and friendliness over experience. Avoid generic corporate HR language like fast-paced environment or team player. Make it sound like it's actually from the owner. Now, you may have noticed in these prompts that I just shared with you that a few of them have descriptions like make it sound like it's actually from the owner, or don't make it sound like a big box discount ad. And those are good guardrails to put into place. But there's a better, more efficient way of handling those guardrails that we're going to get into in the next section. Hey, we're in the next section. What do you know? The next section is all about how do we get more out of AI. Now, up until now, I've just shown you a few sample examples, a few samples of different prompts that you might run. But one of the critical ways in which using AI properly is understanding how to best use it, what type of approach to take. And one way of organizing different types of AI would be prompts, which we've seen so far, GPTs, and agents. So let me explain the difference between these three. Prompts, we've just taken a look at. And if you've used AI in any way so far, you've used prompts. Prompts are just when you are talking or chatting with the large language models. So with prompts, using a metaphor of maybe a carpenter or a wood shop, a simple prompt is when you need something quickly and it's kind of a one-off. If you need to cut one piece of wood, probably all you need is a handsaw. You can do it, you're done, it's simple, it's easy, and you move on to the next task. But what happens if you need to cut that piece of wood a dozen times or 100 times? And if you need it to be consistent every single time, then those prompts might not be quite so effective. And that's when you want to start thinking about using a GPT, which is also sometimes referred to as an AI assistant. And we're going to go into what an AI assistant is in a few minutes, but basically it's about creating a set of rules and examples so that the AI can continually provide consistent results with a lot less work than writing prompts from scratch. And then the last piece of this is agents or agentic AI. And if we're continuing on with this metaphor, oh, I should have said the previous example, it's like using a power tool where you're getting the same cuts over and over again. Where agentic AI is where the AI can actually go off and do things for you, kind of like hiring a general contractor who can make decisions on your behalf and even hire or bring in these other agents to complete the workload on your behalf. So those are the three types of AI use cases that you might have, and let's take a look at each one. So in general, the better, the more specific your prompts are, the better and more reliable your outputs will be. And that improvement is often referred to as prompt engineering. When I did, when I first used ChatGPT, which was a few months after it dropped, I remember just saying, "Hey, how much should I sell my PS4 for?" And it gave me this really nuanced, amazing response. And I'm like, "Holy cow! Like the future is here." As I've spent more time with AI, I realized like I got lucky. It gave me a good response, but if I wanted to get better responses, I could have framed this question better than I had. So prompt engineering often requires frameworks to improve the results. So the first framework that I ever learned, excuse me, that I ever learned was role and goal, where you state what the role of the AI is and what the objective or goal is. Instead of just asking it for feedback on your P&L statements, you tell the AI that they are an experienced CFO with retail and e-commerce experience before telling it to analyze your P&L and sales history. I know that sounds crazy telling it to do role play, but that's exactly what helps it because it has this insane amount of data that it's been trained on that it can pull from. But by defining its role, it immediately starts thinking in a very specific way and ignoring information that may not be helpful to the output. Once you graduate from role and goal, basically, there are a whole bunch of acronyms for ways of better framing or creating a more robust framework for your prompts. There are dozens, if not hundreds, out there. One of the ones that I was playing around with for a while is called Richie. And I have a image of alphabet soup here because really you could call it anything you want. People always came up with new ones, but it was always more or less the same elements. Richie stands for role, which we already discussed. Instructions, which is kind of like what the goal is. What do I want you to do in response to this prompt? Context is another piece, and context gives background. So instead of assuming it knows what my business is, I give it context. I teach it a little bit about my company or my audience or my products and services. Constraints is how I want the answer formatted. Maybe I need it in a blog post of 800 words. Maybe I need it in iambic pentameter. Maybe I need bullet points. Maybe I need it to sound very official sounding, or maybe I need to sound very down to earth and approachable. So constraints kind of tells the AI what the output should look like. And then the secret sauce of getting better results is examples. Giving an example or multiple examples of what a successful output looks like is the best way to get a successful output. And we'll see that in later examples. Now, creating a really good prompt using those frameworks, as I discovered painfully, is great, but very time consuming. And the whole goal of AI, or one of the goals, is to free up your time, right? So that's going to be problematic. And since iteration is part of the process of getting a good prompt, in other words, refining it over and over again, you're going to spend a lot of time creating that great prompt. So as many people have discovered, AI is especially good at creating prompts for AI. So you as a human might write out a prompt that says something like, create an AI governance document for a small independent bookstore in Portland, Maine. And the AI will generate something that'll be probably passable. But you could also ask AI to write the prompt for you. You could say, I need to create an AI governance doc for a single location bookstore in Portland, Maine. Can you help me create an optimized prompt for this? And I did this exact thing in Claude as preparation for today. And this is the response that I got. Absolutely. I'd use a prompt that asks for practical, right-sized AI governance document, not an enterprise policy monster, anchored around the NIST's AI framework functions, and then it explains what it's going to do. And then this is the prompt that it shared with me. I'm not going to bother reading it because it would take the rest of the time. You certainly wouldn't want to have to write this entire prompt out, but yet it is so specific that it's going to give you a much better output than if you had just said, give me an AI governance document for a small bookstore in Portland, Maine. And then it even followed up, because AI never doesn't give you the next likely step. It even followed up with this. One small improvement. After running this, I'd follow up with a second prompt asking the AI to turn the full doc into a one-page handout and manager checklist. Good advice. And so you could ask it to do that prompt as well. Now, I mentioned that examples is the secret sauce for getting better results. And you can put those examples into the prompt itself, but you can also attach examples to it. So draft an SOP for accepting deliveries after hours. Use these other SOPs for reference. So if you already have SOPs that your team has developed, you can attach them by clicking on that little icon and then uploading Word docs or PDFs or even JPEGs, whatever you need to. And that will give AI a better sense of what you expect the outlook to look like. So that's some ways of improving prompts. But again, if we want to create something, if we're going to do something that we're going to use over and over again, that's where GPTs come in, custom GPTs. Now, you may say, well, I've heard the term custom GPT. What does it stand for? It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. That probably didn't help at all, right? So generative is, it can generate new content like ChatGPT and Claude does. It's pre-trained. It's been trained on an enormous data set. And then transformer, which is a specific deep learning architecture that Google developed back in 2017, which helps AI understand text more quickly and more accurately. Now, you never have to remember that again unless it comes up on a trivia question. But that's what a custom GPT does. And basically what we're doing when we create a custom GPT is we're fine-tuning the bigger model to be very specific to help us. Some popular custom GPTs are custom GPT, which is confusing, I know, from OpenAI ChatGPT. Claude calls them projects. Gemini calls them gems. And Microsoft calls them Copilot agents. But they're basically all the same thing, and they're basically built all the same way. They have three components when you want to build your own custom GPT. They come with instructions. Think of it like the recipe if you're cooking something. They also come with knowledge documents, kind of those examples that I was mentioning earlier. These are the ingredients. And then finally, they get a prompt or an attachment that gets them running. And think of this as like when you go to Chipotle or when you go to some restaurant and they ask you what you want for protein, everything else is the same, but the protein changes everything. Now, when I first started getting into GPTs, I found it to be a little confusing. What's the difference between the instructions and the prompt? And this is how it was explained to me, and I thought this was very clear. Hopefully, it will be for you too. Instructions are like the rule book. So if you're thinking about the NFL, which I often am, this tells us that the rules of the road. It tells us that it takes four downs, you have four chances to get a first down, that you can pass or run or kick the ball on any given play if you're on offense. It tells us that roughing the passer is a penalty. These are the rules that everybody has to play by. The prompt, on the other hand, is like running an individual play. Yes, I know that if I'm on offense, I can run, kick, or punt, run, kick, or pass, but the prompt is a very specific instance of what I'm going to do on this particular play. So that's the difference. The instructions are very meta, and the prompt is very specific. Every time I create a custom GPT for myself or for a client, there's two key ingredients that I include every single time. One is a document that explains who the ICP is, the ideal client persona or buyer personas. And the other one is a brand voice. We don't have time today for me to show you how to build out the ICP doc and the brand voice doc, but that is two of the downloads that I'll be providing for you through the QR code at the end of today's presentation. So if you are going to build a custom GPT, you do need to have a paid version of whatever the AI platform is. But as I told you before, you should always be using the paid version anyways, otherwise you're the product. So this is what it looks like, even though this is a little bit out of date, because they change these things all the time. But this is like if you go into your chat GPT, you can pull down from the menu to My GPTs. There's also often an Explore GPTs button. They go to the same place, and you end up with a page where you can see you can create a new GPT, and you click on that. And this is the screen that you generally see. And you can either create or configure a GPT. Now, when you first start, most people just create it. And when I say create it, it means you're actually co-creating. You tell ChatGPT, hey, I want to create a GPT that writes SOPs, or I want to create a GPT that understands my business and that I can bounce ideas off of, or whatever it is that you need your GPT to do. Configure gives you a little bit more hands-on control of what's going on. So I graduated from create to configure, but honestly, as I've learned that AI is best at training up AI, I've kind of moved back to create, where I just tell the AI what I'm envisioning I want it to do, and it will create the first draft, and then I can iterate on that draft. But in this example, we'll just look at the configure button. And this was one that I did early on to help me with my podcast to create the assets, the promotional assets, after the recording was done. So I click on configure, and I entered, I gave it a name, podcast producer, mostly so I could see what it separated from the rest of the GPTs I created. I gave it a description to tell it what it's supposed to do. I created instructions, and you can see a sample of them here where I basically laid out the role and I told it what I wanted to do and the different things that it needed to produce, which included things like social media posts and a blog post explaining what I had learned and all these other things as well. I've continued to iterate on this, by the way, and these days it actually gives me a closing for my podcast on the outro that references the lessons that were learned in the episode and ends with the phrase, agents of change. So I've trained it over time and I keep on improving on it. So those are the instructions. This is a ChatGPT specific thing. We can also use conversation starters that are one-click buttons that get it going. Honestly, I've stopped using these. I don't find them to be very effective, but they appear over here. And then you upload your knowledge docs. And in here, I've got my Agents of Change podcast buyer personas. I've got my brand voice doc. I've got some more information about the Agents of Change. And then for some reason, I had some information about social media in there as well. Um, Once you upload documents, and this is ChatGPT specific, suddenly there's going to be this setting that you have to scroll down to because they've purposely hidden it on you. And it says additional settings. And then you have to open additional settings. And then you'll see a box that you want to uncheck that says use conversation data in your GPT to improve our models. In other words, let us train our models off of your content. There's no good reason to do this. So uncheck that box and then you're ready to go. Now, like I said, you can do these in a lot. There are GPTs for almost every platform. These days, I use Claude more. I just like the product better than I like ChatGPT, but your mileage may vary. I recreated almost all of my my custom GPTs as Claude projects. So I basically did the same thing over here. I uploaded the similar documents. I gave it the same set of instructions, which I mentioned I've since iterated on. And now, when I get a podcast transcript, which I'm recording automatically and I use Fathom to record and create transcripts, I upload it. I don't even need to tell this GPT, this Cloud project, what to do. And it goes ahead and it creates all the content for my show that I can use, including SEO titles, takeaways, emails, social media prompts, social media quotes that I can use in clips, and a whole bunch of other things that I've since used. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on agentic AI. I have only started using this myself in the past few months. And again, agentic AI is AI that can take actions on your behalf. Now, most platforms do have some sort of agentic AI, and you do have to use the paid versions. I use Claude's, which is called Cowork. And it's interesting. I actually interviewed 3 different AI experts about agentic AI for my podcast this calendar year, and all 3 of them use and recommend Claude over any other tool. Claude's agentic AI is called Cowork. And like I said, you're going to need to have a paid version. It only is available in the app, so you have to download the app to use it. There used to be 3 tabs up here that would say chat, co-work, and code. But in the last week or so, they upgraded that. And so now chat and co-work are down here. So you can go back and forth between the two or do code. Code, by the way, is very similar to co-work, but it's less user-friendly and it's more for writing code. So chances are, unless you are doing heavy coding, you'll never need it. But for me, I really like this new approach because all of my GPTs, including Orbi, I can now access and use it as agentic AI. So it already knows my ICPs, it already knows my brand voice, it already knows what I'm looking to do, it knows everything that I've trained Orbi on. And so it's just, I'm getting better, more consistent results because of this. Couple of things that I'm doing right now in agentic AI is I have it run a morning email digest. So when I open up my computer in the morning, Claude goes to work. It goes through all the emails that have come in overnight and it prioritizes them in 3 folders in my inbox, 1, 2, or 3. And then it sends me an email that tells me what it's done and it explains why it's prioritized things in that way. That's just a huge time saver, especially on Monday morning when I come in and maybe there's 150 emails in my inbox. Press this button, grab my coffee, and by the time I've got my coffee, it's already done all this work for me. I've also started creating a weekly status update in Cowork. And one of the ways that I'm using this is that I've given it permission to not just go into my email, but to look at this week's calendar, next week's calendar, all of the new Evernotes, because I use Evernote, that we've done. It looks through my project management software. It looks through my CRM software. And it looks through our Slack conversations as well. It gathers all that information, it summarizes the past week, and it prioritizes what I need to work on the following week. And this just takes a few minutes of its time. And again, I can go off and do whatever I want during this time period as well. And these are just a few use cases of agentic AI. So hopefully that will spur some ideas for you in terms of how you can use it as well. Before we get into questions, I just wanted to kind of summarize what we've talked about today. AI is powerful for sure. It really is a competitive advantage, but it can erode trust with people when used poorly. And that can be internal people like your team, as well as external people being your customers. The more I use AI, the more I see where it's strong and where it's weak. And you need to focus on using AI where it's strong and hold tight to where you're strong. Start with prompts, especially if you're just getting going, but then start to explore building out your first GPT and then start playing around with agentic AI. You will need to have paid versions of these tools and you will need to use the app, especially for agentic AI, but I think it's well worth it. And lastly, stay human. Like I said, I started last year thinking that I wanted to be an AI first company. But most people don't want to work with AI first companies, especially when we're talking about small to medium sized businesses, retail, where we're expecting to have human interactions with humans. You really want to make sure that you're staying as human as possible. Use AI in the background. Help it make you more efficient, help it find problems, help you brainstorm and pressure test ideas, but make sure that your front line, the way that you meet people, is as human as possible. I am going to take questions, but I'm going to actually take them in just a second. I did want to remind you that we've got some downloads available for you. So I've got the slide deck for today's presentation, which includes all those prompts you saw. I've got the list of AI tools for retailers, again, not vetted by me because that's not my area of expertise, but I thought this would be a good place for you to get started on your own research if you're looking for something that has been tailor-made for the retail business or for e-commerce. A walkthrough of how you can create your brand voice doc so that your AI sounds like you or sounds like your company. How to create that ICP document and then how to improve it. So this again is another critical tool for you to use. You can use it in prompts, but you can also use it in GPTs as you saw, and then a whole lot more. All you need to do is scan in this QR code, or you can just go to our website at takeflyte.com/tabletop. There's no link to that. Don't ask me why it's called tabletop. Super boring, long answer. But this URL will require you to sign up for our email mailing list. I'm a marketer after all. But you can unsubscribe as soon as you get all the goodies. But I think that once you subscribe, you're going to get a lot of great content that's going to help you grow your business. So I hope you stick around with us rather. So that's takeflyte.com/tabletop, all one word. And that's the QR code if you want to pull out your phone and scan it. My name is Rich Brooks. Thank you for your attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rich. That was really, really great. Um, you know, it was really such an informative and practical presentation. We hope today's discussion has provided everyone with a better understanding of how AI can be effectively incorporated into their business in a meaningful and manageable way. We have reserved time now for questions. So as a reminder, to submit a question, move your cursor to the bottom of the screen, click the Q&A icon, type your question, and click send. And to get us started, I've jotted down a couple, and this is probably a question you probably get quite a bit. In your presentation, you certainly alternated between ChatGPT and Claude primarily, but it seems like the primary ones out there are ChatGPT, Claude, but there's also Gemini and Copilot. How have you navigated which ones you're deciding to subscribe to? Which ones do you use? Do you use ones for different projects or different situations? I know that could be a very long answer, but wanted to start there.
Stop me when you get bored. But
Okay.
So I started with ChatGPT because it was really the first one that was publicly accessible. And so that's where I kind of trained up. Over time, when I realized that I really wanted to do more with AI and I wanted to talk about it, I started getting more platforms. So I got a license for Claude as well and started using that. I did find that it wrote a little bit better in my opinion, and I think that it's only improved over time. I also feel that, and this is a political statement possibly, that it's the least evil of all the AI companies out there. But I also really like Gemini, which is put out there by Google. And so I spend a lot of time, especially on their deep research. And I was using their Nano Banana, which is the image generator, quite a bit. But then ChatGPT upgraded their image creator. And most of the images you saw today of all the robots in retail situations, I have Adobe stock. I get an image that I really like. I bring it over to ChatGPT and I basically have a prompt that says, turn this person into a robot, keep everything else the same. That's much better results than just trying to generate something from scratch. So I'm using it, like you said, for specific purposes. Deep research, I really like using Gemini for. I don't really do anything in Microsoft. I don't think it's as good as the others, Copilot. And the other thing is it's mostly built into um, the Microsoft suite. So if you're a Microsoft company, then it probably makes sense for you to use Copilot more often. But other than that, try them and see which one works. I don't recommend that other people have three paid versions. I don't even want to talk about how much money I spend a month on licenses, but between me and the rest of my company. But you can get away with just one. And if I had to recommend one today, I would probably recommend Claude.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of my sense as well. So I appreciate that. In a similar vein, you talked early on in your presentation about generating policies for its use. Because it's so dynamic, how often do you revisit those policies? Because I think, unlike a sexual harassment policy or other HR policy that most businesses have, because it's so dynamic, do you find yourself revisiting these policies much more frequently?
Curtis, I should have a better answer to this, but I hadn't really thought through that. That's actually a great point. The platforms themselves change, but I actually think that the reason why I should be checking it more often is because the way that humans interact with AI changes. And so when we hear new horror stories, or if we see our employees using it in a certain way that maybe isn't the best way possible, that's when we have to start changing the policy. So, as an example, recently I just found out that a few people in my company were using, I'd given access to ChatGPT for everybody, and we're starting to get some people saying, hey, can I use Claude 2 or Claude instead? And so we did an inventory of what are all the tools that people are using. So, A, we could kind of get everybody on the same account with their own licenses. And then also, just to make sure that we had a better understanding of what tools people were using. And it turned out a few people were using a free version, which is everything I just said we shouldn't be doing. They were using it just because they wanted to use Claude and we hadn't provided a licensed version of Claude. And that's a common thing in businesses, shadow use of AI. So we then we are about to update our policy to say, like, you are not allowed to use a free version of any software for any kind of client facing work, or whatever the right phrasing will be, because I don't want any of that information leaking out. We have to be stewards of our clients' data.
Mm. Yeah.
There is one quick question, kind of more of a statement in the Q&A, that they've gone to the link and subscribed. So the download's going to be emailed to them.
Thank you. I should have said that. Yes, they will be available in the next 24 hours. So I'm going to let everybody get their stuff in, and then I'm going to email them out. So that'll be ready. You should expect that by tomorrow.
And also for people's benefit, as we said in the beginning, we are recording this and it will be sent out after, hopefully later today to folks as well. So you can revisit those. Aim, do you have anything?
I don't. Thank you so much. This has been really informative.
All
Excellent.
right.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
You got it. This is the last chance for questions. We'll give it another 30 seconds as well. Just let me say, Rich, I've known you for years, and you've always been on the cutting edge of new technologies. So I really appreciate how you bring, these what can sometimes be complex things to a really understandable level for folks, and certainly make it less scary. So,
Thank you.
I think I've been around long enough. I've seen a lot of transformations in business, the onset of cell phones in the workplace and email coming aboard, and then social media, and now this. And it can always, we use the term disruption. And this is obviously another disruptor, but having people like you to help navigate it is certainly helpful and appreciated.
Yeah, and if I just say, if people do have questions that they didn't want to ask in front of others, or that they might not think of today, but after they get the content, the downloads from me, that they realize that that's something that they suddenly have a question, they can reach out to me. They'll have my contact information. I'm always happy to answer a question, so feel free to just reach out and ask. Let me know what's going on.
And we'll also do a shameless plug here as well. We're working on our Front Counter Forum annual meeting, which will be October 1st in Bangor. And Rich is going to be there in person to present another segment of this emerging technology as well. So if you enjoyed Rich today, you can actually find out he actually is a real person and not AI generated when he's joining us in Bangor in October. And you'll be seeing marketing materials on that later this summer. So with that, that brings us to the end of today's webinar. A sincere thank you to Rich for sharing his expertise with us this morning, and thank you to everyone who joined us. We hope today's conversation has provided you with practical ideas and new ways to think about how AI can support your business today and into the future. We encourage you to stay connected with our associations and watch for future exchange webinars covering additional topics impacting Maine and New Hampshire businesses. Thank you again for your participation and have a wonderful day.